a baby, as newborn babes in Christ desire the sincere milk of the word that you might grow thereby. But it also talks about as you advance more and you get deeper into the studies and so forth and mature a little bit in your Christian walk, that you become a meat eater. And some of these studies are kind of on the carnivore level there, rather than the formula level. But I kind of like both. So I'm going to jump into this with a question. You know what the question is? That's right, Noel. You nailed it. How y'all doing on your homework here? Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. We're going to review this homework a little bit, but I'm thinking, has anybody decided how long this series is going to go when I'm done? Because it usually goes up to around spring break or Easter, but it's a totally different schedule this year. Easter comes a lot earlier. It's the end of March. Anyway, once y'all figure out how long this is going, that's when I'll know how long you'll have to finish it. Because I'm thinking we'll do it like this. That's a tough order, the homework assignment I've given you. We are going to review it, but what we're going to do is make this a goal for everybody by the end of this series, that everybody will know the 12 tribes of Israel based upon the sons of Jacob, okay? And the bonus info, first bonus info is which wife or concubine was the mother of each of them, okay? And what did I tell you for the big bonus, the bonus level 2? Anything you could find out about the daughters, okay? There's only one mentioned, but with 4 different women giving birth to boys, there's bound to be more than one girl in there somewhere, And there are other sources outside the Bible that have a little info on that. And then the other thing was, what is a symbol for each of the 12 tribes, and or what does that mean? So you've got some depth to that, but the basics of it are just to be able to name the 12 tribes of Israel from memory. Now look, guys, as a little kid, if you did Bible camps or anything like that, they had you memorize the books of the Bible in order. This is just 12 dudes. 12, not 66 books or just the 27 of the New Testament, whatever. It's only 12 guys. So I'm thinking by the time we're done, everybody who's regularly attending this will know who the 12 guys are, the 12 tribes of Israel, and the nuance about Joseph. Why is there no tribe of Joseph? He's one of the 12 sons. Why was it split into 2? No, his two sons become 2 half tribes, correct? Which means technically there's 13, but there are 2. And yet, what was the prophecy toward the sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, about their future? What were they to be? This is really cool because they were to be the ones who were known for their nobility and wealth. Unlike the tribe of Judah, who were known for kings, the tribe of the kings. And that's kind of where the lesson tonight goes into as well. So let me just ask you this. How many of you think, I'm not going to put you on the spot here, but how many of you are close to being able to name the 12? Sherry. Close. I'm not even going to put you on the spot, but but you're feeling like you made some progress, but some time has elapsed, and now you're questioning it. Okay, next question. Anybody here look into the possibility of daughters, girls in the mix there and learn anything? The one named in the Bible there is Dinah. Okay, no others that you could find yet. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else looking? Are you, a granddaughter? Yeah, there are granddaughters for sure.
And there was some speculation, did you do the math right, that there was 21
21
dollars.
daughters. They're almost 2 to 1 on the boys. That, okay, I'll look forward to some more information on that. You're going to have to go to some extra biblical sources to find out anything about the girls here, you know.
Is there any truth to that Dinah
May have married who? Did you say Job? I think that Job predates this time. I would not have come to that conclusion. However, I'm willing to look into it and see. I may be totally wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Job's time predates this and easily makes him a contemporary of Abraham or earlier.
You gave us some clues last week that there were more than one daughter. You gave us a couple of Genesis scriptures to look up.
Did I now?
Yes, and I do see that they're here this week.
Well, now. She's on to me, I think. Okay.
No, you really did. And it's Genesis 37 and 46.
I'm going to tell you, neither of those name any daughters of Jacob by any of these four. They don't.
It just says there were more daughters.
There you go.
That was the question.
Right. There are indicators that there are some more girls, but the Bible doesn't name or have anything about any of them except for Dinah. Yes.
So extra biblical sources, you like to have help?
Well, you know what? Once again, David, I learned when I talked to you, as I did just a few minutes ago, that is an extra biblical source. And so it's undeniable. I don't know if you're going to find out anything about daughters of Jacob there, but it definitely qualifies as an extra biblical source. So what would be some extra biblical sources where you might find this sort of thing? He said apocrypha. Well, there could be apocryphal writings. Go ahead and dig into those. What is another one of Jewish origin, Hebrew origin that you might find? The Talmud. Yeah. I doubt you'll find anything in the writings of Josephus on that, based on when he did his writing and so forth. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you won't. But I'm not absolutely certain on that. But there are lots of Jewish histories that aren't recorded in the Bible, and starting with the Talmud and digging into some of those. For example, in the book of Jude in the New Testament, there is a reference made to a book that a lot of us feel like should be in the Bible. Does anybody know what that was? The book of Enoch. Enoch. Now, Enoch dates back there a bit too. And it's, as a matter of fact, it is these days with the internet, anybody can go online and find an English translation of the book of Enoch for free and just read it online. How about that? Is that helpful to you? Enoch. What is, by the way, just as a quick review on general Bible knowledge, what is unique about Enoch that most of us know something about him? Why does he stand out in biblical history? He didn't die. That's right. Can you name one other individual who didn't die based on the biblical record? Elijah. That's right. And that's why a lot of people believe that the two witnesses referred to in the book of Revelation who witness in the streets of Jerusalem in the end times are Enoch and Elijah. But of course, the other school of thought on that is that they are Moses and Elijah. That would represent the law and the prophets, plus at the Mount of Transfiguration, who were the two guys who appeared there with Jesus? Moses and Elijah. Right. But I kind of like the idea of Enoch and Elijah because both of them were translated. In other words, they went to be with God without having physical death first. Kind of cool stuff, huh? Anything else here on the 12 sons that y'all want to dig into for right now? Does everybody think that by the time we're done with this series, you can be able to name the 12? I think you can. Yeah. Okay, let me ask you this question. If you were given a choice between learning the 12 sons of Jacob and memorizing the 27 books of the New Testament, which would you choose? I mean, which do you think would be easier for you? These 12 or the 27 books of the New Testament? So, and a lot of you are thinking the books of the New Testament would be easier because why? You already kind of know some of those. But if you think about it, you already kind of know these guys too. You just don't think about it much. Reuben is his favorite sandwich. I think that was a special today right up here at the sandwich shop too. So I heard something about that anyhow. So I'm going to see if I can get my notes opened up for tonight. And by the way, that little handout you've got for tonight, I want to tell you something about that. That's going to be like 2 weeks worth or more. I know it's just one little piece of paper. You wouldn't think it could have all that in it, but it kind of does. And I'm getting my notes out here now. And I'm going to get a copy of your notes too to kind of work off of because I'm looking at, my notes are a little different. Is it okay if I take this one right here for now? Okay. So I want to tell you a little bit of the dilemma here. There's a lot of people who don't believe the Bible. There's a lot of people who don't believe the Bible and are really quick to point out any seeming contradiction in the Bible in order to justify that by saying, look, it's totally unreliable. It's full of contradictions. You can't believe it. Have you ever heard anybody say things like that? Okay, I do every day. I hear that kind of thing every day. So I'm going to kind of lay the groundwork for this because I think this is an important thing in understanding Israel, understanding the Bible, and also understanding the depths of what the Bible reveals in the layers and layers of events that go into fulfilling the promises of God. Because it's always moving pieces that you don't even see, and it comes out to be total fulfillment of God's promises and God's prophecy. And that's kind of what this lesson is about. And here's a little bit of the dilemma. There's really a combination of two promises. One of the promises, and I'll get into the actual outline here in just a minute. I'm just kind of ad-lib talking you through this to set up some understanding. The one promise I've got on your page there, basically, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes, and him shall be the obedience of the people. Okay, so we're told basically out of Judah there will be a king until basically till the time of Shiloh, which is the arrival of the Messiah, Jesus, okay? So then there's also layered onto that later the descendant of David, the Davidic covenant, where it says once again that the throne of David would be established forever, and there would never be a time when a descendant of David did not sit upon the throne. Now, as you know, Jesus came from which tribe? I just gave it to you. Judah, tribe of kings. Okay, there will never be a time when there isn't a descendant of Judah on the throne. Okay, that is now Jesus, of course, from the time of Jesus' arrival. Okay, but then we also narrow that down even more a few generations later when we're told that it would be a descendant of David on the throne until the time of Jesus. Now, David was also a descendant of Judah. And Judah is a son of who, by the way? Jacob. All right, okay. All right. We're getting there. You guys, he was one of how many sons of Jacob? See? You guys got one down already. And another one's a sandwich. And you know Joseph was one. And you know Joseph had a little brother that was one. See, you got a third of it right there. Boom, just like that, without even trying. But back to my dilemma on this. At the time of Babylonian conquest, the Babylonian captivity, however you want to say it, when they defeated Jerusalem and they killed all the sons of the king at the time, who was King Zedekiah. You don't have to remember him. He's not one of the 12. Forget him. But he's important for our lesson in understanding this. He's a pivotal part in our overall history. They killed all the sons of Zedekiah, and they also, in a slower way, they killed Zedekiah. They put out his eyes and took him to Babylon, and he died there. Remember? Y'all don't remember this? It was pretty gross. Pretty gory kind of stuff they did. But he didn't do what he was supposed to do, and that's how it happened. So basically, Zedekiah was the kingly line from Judah and more precisely from David at the time. All of his sons were killed. He died in Babylon. So that's the end of the Davidic line and the line of Judah on the throne, we would think, right? But God had something else going on. And we will miss that if we don't get into our Bibles and the history and understand it. Hence, the purpose of this lesson. You see what I'm getting at? This is making sense to you. All right. So, let's look at this from the very beginning. I read the scripture in Genesis chapter 49, and does anybody off the top of your head know the context of this scripture in Genesis chapter 49? You have to look it up. Don't try to Google it real fast or anything. Just do you know the context of what's happening there? It's at the end of whose life? Yes. It's right at the end of Jacob's life, and he is passing on the blessing to each of his sons and basically prophesying their future. And this is what he said, part of what he said of Judah. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the people. In other words, this is the line of the kings for the nation Israel. Now, I want to jump into Matthew. These little genealogies, they seem like the parts you skip over in the Bible, right? But you know what I do with those from in the past. When we kind of dug into Luke's, the genealogy of Jesus in the Gospel of Luke, right? That the fact that Luke, the great historian and the physician, everything, the doctor, and the man who was very particular on all the details of history, it became pretty apparent to us that Luke believed Eliakim, who was the father of Mary, had a son named Joseph. He wouldn't have just named somebody else as, well, it's really a son-in-law, but Luke just, no, Luke isn't like that. He's precise. And so remember that? We got into the genealogy and discovered that, and we said, oh, so Eliakim, the father of Mary, had a son named Joseph. Then who is that? And we dug into that and discovered it just opened up all kinds of Bible and history and everything, didn't it? Another story for another time. If you missed that lesson, you missed an awful lot. That was a bunch of lessons, actually, wasn't it? And it kind of starts right there. We just turn over the rocks that look like they need to be turned over, and we find what's there, and then we find other rocks to turn over. That's what we've got right here. Notice this. Matthew chapter 1, verse 1 through 3. This is the genealogy in Matthew's gospel, or part of it. A record of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob. Jacob, the father of Judah and his brothers. Judah, the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. Now, I've thrown in a couple of clues here in the bold print right below that. Why are there two sons of Judah named here? Because we could have just as well said Abraham was the father of Isaac and Ishmael. Isaac was the father of Jacob and Esau, but it doesn't. It doesn't say Abraham was the father of Isaac and Ishmael. It doesn't say Isaac was the father of Jacob and Esau, but it says Jacob was the father of Perez and Zerah. And it could have said Jacob was father of Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Benjamin, but it didn't. It says he's the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. Why? It doesn't say that about any of the others whose two sons would seem to be much more significant than Perez and Zerah, right? Who do you know more about, Isaac and Ishmael or Perez and Zerah? Who do you know more about, Jacob and Esau or Perez and Zerah? Right. But it doesn't say that in the genealogy in Matthew. So maybe we should say, why is that? That's where I'm going with this, okay? And if you guys will bear with me, we're going to read a story out of the Bible that begins this saga that is described here in Matthew, okay? I am going to open up the Bible here and read to you this. Give me just a moment and I will get to it. Here we go. And that is Genesis 38. And if you got your Bible, open it up and follow along. I decided not to print all that scripture in there or anything. Otherwise, I'll just read it and you'll have I'm reading from the NIV, I think, here. But here it is. At that time, Judah left his brothers and went down to stay with a man of Adullam named Hira. Well, what time was this? Does anybody recall? I'm pretty sure it's the time that his wife died. He got pretty sad after that. But anyway, he goes down to stay with a man of Adullam named Hira. Then Judah met the daughter of a Canaanite man, Shua. He married her and lay with her. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son who was named She conceived again and gave birth to a son and named him Onan. She gave birth to still another son and named him Shelah. It was at Kezib that she gave birth to him. Judah got a wife for his firstborn. Her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death. He died an untimely death, right? Then Judah said to Onan, the next son, "Go lie with your brother's wife and fulfill your duty to her as a brother-in-law to produce offspring for your brother." But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his, so whenever he lay with his brother's wife, he spilled his semen on the ground to keep from producing offspring for his brother. And what he did was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death also. Judah then said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Live as a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up," for he thought he might die too, just like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's house. After a long time, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. I was misremembering when Judah's wife died. I thought it was before this. It's at this one. When Judah had recovered from his grief, he went up to Timnah to the men who were shearing his sheep, and his friend Hira, the Adullamite, went with him, his sidekick. Don't know much about him. He was Judah's sidekick, though. Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is on his way to Timnah to shear his sheep." And she took off her widow's clothes. Apparently in those days, if you were a widow, you had to wear something that signified you were a widow, right? She took off her widow's clothes, covered herself with a veil to disguise herself. Then she sat down at the entrance of Enam, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that though Selah had now grown up, she had not been given to him as his wife. The significance of all that is what? Posterity, offspring. This whole thing was about this. And God had given them laws, and this was for particularly the 12 tribes, the 12 sons, for the future and the nation that was to come from them, and they had to produce the offspring that they were expected. And how many young gentlemen have died for not doing that now? Sons of Judah, how many? Yeah, exactly. Grandsons of, yeah, there you go, Jacob. So Tamar now was promised the third son. And he's grown up now, but Judah, for whatever reason, doesn't bring her in to be his wife. It was his role as the patriarch, the dad, right? He didn't do that. So now she's like, well, I'm just going to have to take things in my own hands. She's a clever girl here, this Tamar. So she saw that though Shelah had not grown up, she had not been given to him as his wife. When Judah saw her, remember she's sitting at the gate to a town on the way to where he's going. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute because she had covered her face. Remember, she put a veil on. And not realizing that she was his daughter-in-law, he went over to her by the roadside and said, "Come now, let me sleep with you." I mean, his wife had died. He just got over the grief, and here's a woman, and, that's all he needed, apparently. "And what will you give me to sleep with you?" Here's this clever girl, Tamar. "What will you give me to sleep with you?" she asked. "Well, I'll send you a young goat from my flock," he said. "Will you give me something as a pledge until you send the goat?" she asked. And he said, "Well, I don't know, what pledge should I give you?" And she said, "Your seal and its cord and the staff in your hand." That's like an ID card, buddy. That's fingerprints there, right? So he gave them to her, and he slept with her, and she became pregnant. You following all this? He gave them to her, and he slept with her. That's a euphemism for something else. And she became pregnant, fertile young lady that she was, after being a widow all this time, apparently not all that long. She became pregnant by him, and after she left, she took off her veil and put her widow's clothes on again. Clever girl, that Tamar. I like her. Then Judah said, "Let her keep what she has, or we will become a laughingstock. After all, Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead too much. I skipped a paragraph, sorry. Meanwhile, Judah sent the young goat by his friend, the Adulamite sidekick, in order to get his pledge back from the woman. You're following, right? His staff, his seal or signet, and the cord goes with that, okay? The key identifying things of his, right? So I'll get my pledge back, those items. I'll go ahead and send that goat. His sidekick took it there, but he couldn't find her. And he asked the men who lived there, where is the shrine prostitute who was beside the road at Enaim? There hasn't been any shrine prostitute here, they said. Now you guys understand what a shrine prostitute is, right? In the fertility religions of the ancient world, they basically had the shrine prostitutes that represented the fertility goddess. And generally, a couple of things would happen in the formality of this, and that is there would be kind of a lottery, and somebody's name would be drawn, and it would be their job to go in with the shrine prostitute, or temple prostitute as they're often known, have sex with her, and sometimes it would be for 2 or 3 days or a week, and sometimes just overnight, but they would have this time, and by doing so, it would appease the fertility gods and assure them good crops, okay? So that was the idea of the shrine prostitute. It grew on out of that to where they could just go out into the streets or whatever and pick up guys for a little extra cash. You know, you got to make them money. You got to use what you got to make some money, you know. Once they're chosen for a prostitute, they don't have anything. They can't go beat somebody's wife really or anything, you know, so they're wrecked. So they got to do what they can to get by, right? Okay, there's your shrine prostitute. So they had assumed that she was a shrine or temple prostitute. Apparently, they asked around, where's that temple prostitute that was here just, you know, a little while back? Oh, there hadn't ever been one here. And so we went back to Judah and said, I didn't find her. Besides, the men who lived there said there hadn't been any shrine prostitute here. Once again, clever girl. Then Judah said, well, let her keep what she has, or we will become a laughingstock. After all, I did send her the young goat, but you didn't find her. About 3 months later, Judah was told, your daughter-in-law Tamar is guilty of prostitution. And as a result, she's now pregnant. Judah said, bring her out here. I'll have her burned to death. Burn her to the stake. As she was being brought out, she sent a message to her father-in-law. I am pregnant by the man who owns these, she said. And she added, see if you recognize whose seal and cord and staff these are. Clever. Judah, he recognized them. And he said, she's more righteous than I. Since I wouldn't give her to my son Shelah, he knew his crime there, and he didn't sleep with her again. A little late, but he said, I ain't going to do that again. Well, who cares at this point, man? It's the deed is done, right? And when the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. As she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand. So the midwife took a scarlet thread and tied it on his wrist and said, this one came out first. But he drew his hand back in and his brother came out. And she said, so this is how you have broken out. And he was named Perez. Then his brother, who had the scarlet thread on his wrist, came out, and he was given the name Zerah. Oh, real quick, back into Matthew there. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, and Judah the father of these two boys, right? Now, Zerah was supposed to be the firstborn, but he wasn't. His brother managed to get out of the womb first. But Zerah had a red ribbon or thread tied around one wrist, marked as firstborn, but he wasn't the firstborn. There's problems here. And this all comes up later. I remember reading this when I first started reading the Bible. I thought, what an odd story. And it was just in the last couple of years that I came across what was significant about this. Okay. Um, so the name Perez means a break or a breach or breaking forth. He broke out of the womb first. Okay. Named this because he came out even after his brother had stuck his hand out first. The name Zerah means from a rising of light, like the rising of the sun. Also means seed. There's the seed sprouts. So we have these two sons of Judah, not the only two sons of Judah, but, and it also specifies in Matthew that they were from Tamar. Interesting thing, because Tamar was what relationship to Judah already? It was a daughter-in-law, right? All right, you're getting it. So this is where I'm going to kind of dive into a few things that you're going to find interesting, I think. Now, Zerah then is marked by the thread, became the second-born, although was by all means supposed to be the firstborn. The older brother then, named Perez. David, his family and descendants were all descendants of Perez, not Zerah. Okay? So, tracking back the two prophecies. One, the scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes. Then the second was that David's descendants would sit on the throne until the time of Shiloh, once again, the time of the arrival of the Messiah, and David's throne be established forever at that point. So now we've got an issue here. David's descendants, including King Zedekiah, who was king at the time Nebuchadnezzar conquered Jerusalem, right? What are we looking at on time here? All right, we're good. I got to be careful. Zedekiah was a descendant of Perez or Zerah. Which one? Perez. David was a descendant of Perez, and Zedekiah was a descendant of David, right? So at the time of Nebuchadnezzar's conquering of Jerusalem, what happened to all the sons of Zedekiah? They were killed. Everybody saw them killed. What happened to Zedekiah? He had his eyes poked out, and then he died shortly after that in Babylon without leaving an heir. Okay? Now we've got a seeming contradiction in the Bible. Right? How do we resolve that? Well, unbeknownst to us, this was one of the tasks that God had assigned to a certain prophet named Jeremiah. And it's a no small task. Because how do you fix that? Well, it goes back to the daughters of Zedekiah who were not killed. And I've got to get to another page of my notes here, but one of those daughters had just got married. Yep. And some would say, no, she just got engaged and the wedding wasn't actually finalized until she went back with the guy. So let me get this. Okay, killed all the princes of Judah and Riblah, the Zedekiah, and so next week I'm going to get into all the details of the scripture there at the end of Jerusalem when Nebuchadnezzar came in. I'm going to give you the short version of that right now, okay? And here's what happened. Jeremiah and a few others were spared. And Nebuchadnezzar had told them, you can come with me to Babylon, or you can do whatever you want. But God had said that the life of Jeremiah would be protected. The life of Jeremiah's scribe, Baruch, would also be spared and divinely protected. And the daughters of King Zedekiah spared and protected. And there was another person there at this time who was, I haven't tried to pronounce this out loud yet. Eochaid Hiramon. Eochaid Hiramon. Okay? And he was a descendant of Zerah. But wait a minute. Where were the descendants of Zerah all these generations and all this time? Something going on here, right? Reading this out of a couple of other notes real quick. Cheated out of their birthright, the descendants of Zerah separated from the children of Israel soon after the Exodus, which was about the time all this happened, right? Okay, so let's just back up and get it locked into our mind about when the time frame of this is. What time are the sons of Jacob taking wives and having their own children and so forth? Let me make it even easier. Before or after they moved to Egypt? Before. Okay. So all of them would have had descendants who multiplied in Egypt. Following me on that? Okay. The descendants of Zerah, who is a grandson of Jacob, right? Cheated from their birthright, which was the birthright of what? What's the significance of that? Kings of Israel. He was to be the firstborn. He had the red thread. He didn't get that. And the descendants knew that. They're going back to the land, the Exodus time, and things are getting established in the land. And they separated themselves from the rest of Israel shortly after the Exodus. Well, where did they go? This is not a whole tribe of Israel. It's the descendants of Zerah. I'm not sure how many there were at that time. Probably quite a little gang of them, just based on how all Israel had multiplied, right? So here's the historical references that I have. Some of the children or descendants of Zerah went north to Greece. Others went to Troy near the Dardanelles. Did I say that right? Probably not. Which, by the way, bears the name of Zerah's fifth son, Darda. After Troy's fall to the Greeks, a group of Zerahites under the leadership of Brutus migrated to Britain via Malta. And they were in that area at the time of Jeremiah. But let me bring up another little thing that was going on at this, even later than this. Let me get back to my notes on that. We're told in the book of Nehemiah that there is a ambassador present in Jerusalem who was the deputy of the king. But wait a minute, which king? King of what? This gets really interesting. He was a deputy of the king of Persia, Cyrus, would have been correct at the time, right? But he wasn't from Babylon. No, he was from the British Isles, the area we would now call Ireland. But he was there as an ambassador, and why was that? The Hebrew people out in that part of Europe maintained an interest in what was going on back in the land of promise. And they always kept ambassadors there. And they were always associated with whatever power and royalty were in charge in the area. We find that as late as the time of Nehemiah, and this particular time goes back even before the time of David, which some of that was already happening. And the gentleman that I named a few minutes ago, and I'm going to have to try to pronounce it again, Eochaid Haraman, a descendant of Zerah, who is believed to have been from the place today we would call Ireland. What I'm saying is the descendants of Zerah had separated themselves from the rest of Israel, had continued to produce, had been quite successful throughout the world where they had gone, but at this particular time in history, a daughter of King Zedekiah, who is a descendant of Perez, and is the next in line to the throne, marries a descendant of Zerah, restores the broken breach, and the scepter does not depart from Judah, and the descendant of David remains on the throne. Now, back to Matthew again. Why does it say, it doesn't say Abraham the father of Isaac and Ishmael. It doesn't say Isaac the father of Jacob and Esau, but it does say Judah the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. Now, same question. Why does it say that? Because they're significant in the story. And it all comes back together there. What I'm leaving out here is some really cool details about what happened there at the fall of Jerusalem with Zedekiah, Jeremiah, and a few others. There was a couple of assassinations that took place at that time too, in order to put things how they ended up at that particular time. And for Jeremiah to end up with the king's daughters, Zedekiah's surviving daughters, in his custody, and escort them to the homeland of the man to whom the one daughter was engaged, Tamar Tefi. Yeah, her name was Tamar, believe it or not, Tepi. Tamar Tepi was the name of Zedekiah's daughter. And Jeremiah ends up escorting them back to, you can't make yourself say it, can you? Ireland, where she and her new prince husband assume the throne. And who are the people that are there with them? Descendants of Zerah. But more than that. See, I'm just going to give you a little tease on some of this. The northern 10 kingdoms have been conquered, 130, 140 years prior to the fall of Judah, the southern kingdom, to Babylon, 130, 140 years prior to that. Where did they go? Well, the history has it they migrated northward and then somewhat westward into the Caucasus Mountains, and then from there drifted on down into Western Europe. And so why would they have gone there? And see, this is questions I'd asked for years and years, and just in the last 2 or 3 years have been finding answers. Why would they have gone there if that's indeed where they went? I'll tell you why. Because they already had people there who were basically had a whole civilization going there for centuries at this time. From the time of the judges, right? That would have been just after the Exodus, when the descendants of Zerah, which was at least a few thousand, separated themselves from the rest of Israel and went westward that way. But at this particular time, it just so happened that one of the ambassadors who was there observing the events, because this was a critical time when Jerusalem had been besieged, and under the authority of the king there in Ireland. No, sorry. At Nehemiah's time, we see that the ambassador who was there from Western Europe was under the authority of King Cyrus, okay? Interesting time. So we go back prior to this time, and we assume that the ambassadors who were there had some diplomatic authority like that as well. But that was an important time in history because this is when the prophecy was being fulfilled that Jerusalem would fall. And so this guy that Tamar Tepi ends up married to, Eokehad-Heremon, descendant of Zerah, is there, and he gets engaged to the daughter of King Zedekiah. They end up back in his homeland, where he ascends to the throne there. There's a lot more to this. Like I said, the details about the fall of Jerusalem and who did what, where, and all of that. There's the other details are surrounding the specifics of Jeremiah's commission from God and what God had appointed him to do from the time before his birth and even at the time when he was a teenager when God described his calling. I want to get into those things a bit too. And we'll see a whole lot of that. Jim, I know you're trying to ask me a question. I'm going to let you.
I was going to say, is there a possibility there was a family tree drawn up, all these people?
There actually is pretty detailed. The Hebrew people keep very detailed records of who is related to whom and what their family histories are. So it's pretty verifiable if you look in the right places. Yeah, and I'll get into some of that in our next week's study. But what I want you to see is this. First of all, the supposed contradiction in the Bible, which would say, no, look at this. The Davidic line basically ended with Zedekiah and his sons, and it didn't continue. Therefore, the line of Judah ended there too, right? But did it really? No, because Judah had another son, and Zedekiah was just a descendant of Perez. Zerah was, and all of his descendants, they were somewhere. We just hadn't heard anything from them in a long, long time. You start to get this. God had all this in place, even the two sons, and what happened. There is even a history in Ireland of the men of the red hand. Look it up. Look it up. There's a long lineage of history of the... yeah, it's all there. Just look it up. And by the way, speaking of Ireland and coming up near St. Patrick's Day, I'll get into this more a little bit later. There is hidden in much of the ancient Irish culture many Hebrew customs and traditions. And I'll bring some of those out later. But how did they get there? Because that country in its ancient days was made up of Hebrew people. Zerah and his descendants, and then what would have been 300 years later, many from the 10 northern tribes arriving there in great numbers. And by the way, don't you remember when Joseph, the son of Heli Joachim, was the trader in what? What did he trade in? He was a merchant. What was his main commodity? Tin, ore, and copper, but only tin. Joseph was a tin man. There's even, the song is still around today. You can even hear modern performers singing Joseph was a tin man, right? I played you a recording of that even. You saw it. Live performance. I mean, this stuff is readily available for anybody. But where did he go to get his tin ore? British Isles. Why did he go there? One, that's where the tin ore was. But two, how did he know all that? Because the people mining and smelting all the tin ore were Jews. And that's all documented too. I didn't find all this because I'm smart. I found it because you don't have to look that hard to find it. If you just turn over the right rocks. Just get you an old set of encyclopedias, right, Mary Lou? Older encyclopedias have all this information in them, by the way. Yeah. Somebody's asking me, a fellow pastor was asking me, got into conversation with some guys, and I started outlaying just a few little pieces of this. He said, where are you getting all that? And I said, well, it's taken me several years, and I can't name everything I've read along the way, but honestly, you can get pretty much all of this out of the Bible and old encyclopedias, It's all there. But I want to get into this some more and get into the details. But you see what I'm getting at? Matthew's genealogy specifically names 2 sons of Judah. Doesn't name the more prominent sons of Abraham or of Isaac, but specifically names these 2 guys and even who their mother was. Why? Well, later on, it kind of made a big difference, didn't it? And the genealogy of the royal throne of the Hebrew people was preserved that way, just as it had been stated, and it was interrupted. Anyway, I'm going to quit on time tonight, Lydia. By the way, there's only 12 of them, guys. Only 12. We'll do this together, okay? And we'll learn them. And you got a few more weeks to do it. Imagine if you could just learn 4 a week. In 3 weeks, you'd have it. 4 a week. 4 guys a week. Okay, all right, so here's the different levels of achievement, okay? Just knowing the 12, you pass, okay? That you pass with flying colors with just knowing the 12, all right? But if you want to be like the bonus gold star student, you can name which mother each of them came from. There's only 4 different moms. How's that? Okay. All right, thanks, guys.